This is Scott Vanderplu from aeindex.org or the Artist Edition Index, and I recently had the opportunity to sit down via the internet and interview Bob Chapman and Joseph Melchior from Graffiti Designs. The interview focused on Brian Bolland-Batman, The Killing Joke, and other stories and art gallery edition, but we strayed off into other topics as well. I had some issues with this recording. I just switched to Skype, and for some reason, even though the recording was there, I lost the first part of the first question, which was, why is the name of the book so long? And I lost part of Bob's answer. As well in the video, we lost signal for a little bit, and I'm attempting to edit that out. But if you see a little oddness, at about, a little after an hour and 30 minutes, that's the issue. So thank you, and sit tight for an in-depth interview here.
Joke. And then we got some feedback from people saying, is that all that's going to be in the book? Knowing that Killing Joke's only 46 pages, it left a lot of people to question. So how do you create a descriptive title without it being too wordy? And, there was no way. I put an ampersand in instead of using a second A and D, but there really wasn't any way, because, unless we wanted to drop the word Killing Jokes, all the way and just call it, Brian Bolland, DC Comics Gallery Edition, something like that, So it was, I want to say, well thought out, but well thought out because we sure as hell didn't see any other options. And then we opened up the can of worms with Killing Joke. The proper title of the comic is Batman: The Killing Joke. So it became, Brian Bolland, some kind of space, Batman: The Killing Joke, and other stories and art and his life story. And, so again, we kept the brevity where we could as far as on logo type and stuff like that. But technically, like I said, we needed the longer title, and I definitely am open to suggestions for a shorter title, but it's too late, so it won't do any good. So
It's very descriptive.
So that's my long-winded reply to your question there.
I think you and I first began corresponding in 2019, and I think the first question I asked you was what was your next project, and you said working on The Killing Joke. Don't tell, keep that yourself. And now we're in 2024 and the book's finally available. Can you give us a bit of a history on how this came to be?
Like with any of the books, the main problem with these books is accessing the artwork. These books are shot from the original art. Sadly, not everybody's Walt Simonson. Sorry, Walt, but and they didn't retain their artwork. So you can't just make these books magically appear. Gathering the artwork is the biggest task in these. And so we've been gathering. I've been, when I go out, or Joseph and I, we've been keeping our eyes open, not just for the specific book we're doing, but we also keep our eyes open for things we'd like to do, want to do, or something that we feel like might be breaching once in a lifetime. It's our only opportunity to grab a scan of something, so we grab it. And so, we had already been gathering scans and, getting more and more. And then, we were getting to a serious stage about doing the book. And then COVID hit. And so if nothing else, I'm going to use COVID as the excuse for the delay here. But it also opened up a lot of opportunities because, a book where at one point we thought was going to be a little under 200 pages ended up being 280 pages. I mean, especially towards the last few months, there was a flurry of activity. I mean, we maxed out on what we could find with Killing Joke. Unfortunately, we couldn't find the cover and 5 or 6 interior pages, but that's pretty good considering that the artwork was basically sold in 1987, 1988, and is scattered. I mean, scattered is an understatement. I mean, you can look at the list of people who contributors and people allowed us to access their artwork, and it's about 60 people or so, and they're not just from my backyard. I mean, they're from all over the UK and Ireland and the European continent, and there's Singapore and Hong Kong, and then the United States. So the pieces have migrated all over the place over the decades. And like I said, we were very, very happy to be able to get as many of the pieces that we could. And then other things started coming in, the other stories, An Innocent Guy, and the different covers. And so, we had an opportunity to make a very comprehensive and definitive presentation of Brian's stuff. And I want to say it was a hard decision, but it wasn't. It was just one where no, let what we can gain access to and cull from, let that be our guiding light here. So it's so 2019 turned into 2024. And I don't have any excuse for it except that reality. And fortunately, it allowed us to produce a better book than we ever envisioned here. And like I said, sadly, we still never found the cover. The cover seems to be one of those lost pieces. And believe me, I asked, besides asking Brian and Nick Landau and people in the UK who had direct contact with the selling of Brian's art after UK, nobody has seen it. I mean, I suspect that it's probably lining a birdcage somewhere. And, one of these days will be found. But it is, we know that Brian comped some pieces, gifted it to some of the people who worked on the books, but that cover was not one of the pieces he gifted. So, it may be hiding in Brian's palatial estate, or, like I said, I still think it's the birdcage or something like that. But it's if it ever surfaces, that should be real interesting. But we were very fortunate to be able to find the next best thing to the original art. Yeah, because in those days when they did color pieces, they created blue lines and gray and black lines, and this is a black line directly from DC's production department. So it's the same size as the original art. It's first generation, so it was just literally the artwork was shot, and this is a print taken off of that negative. So we got the next best thing, the appropriate size, all the details and stuff. But yeah, the original, nowhere to be found. So if anybody out there has the original, just gift it to me. No, give me a call.
Where was that? Like, did you got it through DC, the production art, or is it
No,
hands of Clever?
no. I mean, it was DC's production art, because I'm familiar with black lines and what they look like and everything. No, it was somebody who either was involved in the production process while it was at DC, or somebody who borrowed it from DC, but no, it did not come from. I mean, DC, rightfully so, doesn't, their archives are limited. They have to be, or else they'd have buildings full of stuff rather than buildings full of people and stuff, but they have good black and white production assets for most of their books. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for all the subtleties and nuances that original art can bring. We're looking for something we can scan in full color so it can be printed in full color to replicate the original art as best possible here. So it's no, again, I can't remember exactly where we got it, but I believe it was somebody that at one time knew somebody who got, and this was thrown away stuff anyways, because it was just, again, literally production art, our production material that was generated to produce books back in the olden days there.
I believe it was somebody who'd interned at DC and ended up with it.
Well, Joseph, what was your role in gathering the artwork for this book? Maybe could you give a little bit of background about yourself? We spoke briefly before the call, and I'm woefully ignorant of yourself and your current occupation and your background. If you could flash this out for us, please.
Well, my day job is I'm a lawyer, but I have been an art collector for quite a while, fan of Brian's work, and a number of other artists who I now rep as an art rep. And I'm a big fan of Killing Joke. It was one of the earliest books that I remember meeting Brian while he was still drawing it, and was completely blown away by what he was producing. And I've always had an interest in Killing Joke and sort of kept an eye out for the pages. And so when, I guess, I don't know, my role is assisting Bob. I guess Man Friday to his Robinson Crusoe is probably how I might jokingly refer to it. But I know a lot of collectors and was able to help source a lot of the pages, especially for Killing Joke. So a lot of the art came from a network of collectors that I knew or have come to know while trying to locate them. Unfortunately, the cover was a piece that we weren't able to locate. I did hope that it would surface at some point, but it never did.
I mean, if I could butt in, I mean, this book couldn't have happened without Joseph, because, as I said before, the access to and locating and all of the original art is it's a big task. It's an impossible task, and because there's no registry, there's no listing of where all this art went, and there's definitely not receipts or paperwork or anything like that. So the stuff is all over the place, and it's not public knowledge. It's not even private knowledge. I mean, there are people who have artwork today that it's not known, you know, who has it or what, and it's a real it's really hard. And like I said, and Joseph does have a good relationship with a lot of the collectors. He knows where many of the skeletons are buried, and I'm saying that in a good way, I think. But you know, it's just it's impossible. I get a kick out of it because at DC and other places I've had this, oh, why don't you do this book? So they make suggestions of what books they want us to do in the gallery editions. And I have told them a number of times that, hey, it's not what I want to do. It's what we realistically can do. And that limits the list incredibly. I mean, it's just, you can't do X, Y, and Z because, you know, you can't get the artwork. It's unobtainable. And if you did, and even these books, I mean, this and Dark Knight, we brought in a lot of people to make that happen. I mean, Joseph's been helping me with these. He's been, again, my right-hand man and co-editor on these books since the beginning, because again, he did have access to knowing more of where the art is. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years in the comic industry, so fortunately I have a little bit of knowledge, but not to the level that Joseph has. And it's just, it's helpful. You know, it's part one of the equation. Then you just have to approach the collectors and go, okay, here's what we're doing. Can you help us in this capacity or not? And then you get a variety of different answers to that question. You know. So sorry, Joseph, I interrupted here.
No, that's good.
What did you encounter? Did you encounter people who had the art that just were not willing to share? No names, but
no, not. I mean, there were a few. We got there's one piece that had the possibility of surfacing, and that's the only piece I can really think of. And it was a Killing Joke page, and it would have been nice to have, but it just, you know, a lot of this is a timing thing. You know, regardless of how persuasive or eloquent or whatever, you're still at the mercy of the person who owns the art. I mean, there's, you know, we could send them, we could have Brian send them a card or a death threat or a million different things, but it's still in the hands of the person who owns the artwork and their situation or their country of origin or their willingness to work with us and put the effort in to scan it or allow us to meet with them to scan it. Or, you know, there's a variety of different options of how to obtain the scan, but they can be cumbersome. And then if somebody has something framed, it's even more difficult because it's like, oh shit, what do you do now? You know, and it's so it's challenging. It's like I said, I used to get a kick out of with DC, and they'd go, "Why don't you do this?" I go, "Well, shit, I've told you a million times we can't do it because of this reason." You know, the stuff just does not exist. The assets is what drives these books, and it's If the assets don't exist, it ain't going to happen.
What percentage would you say you were able to, or you or Joseph were able to scan for the book versus receiving scans from the collectors or the owners?
We scanned ourselves, I would say at least 75, 80% of them. We relied more on other people, but that's a prickly situation also, because regardless of the specs you provide to people, there's subtleties and nuances like what they're scanning it on, the equipment, because nowadays many and most copiers you can scan on it. You can scan on it, you can probably even get the specs, but the quality and the optics are crappy, and I'm being kind, then that all depends on the level of that. So we relied more on other people because of the location of the artwork. And fortunately, there were a few pieces. I mean, I think there's one piece in the book that I'm not happy with, but I had to decide, okay, do we use this crappy scan or do we not include it in the book? And it was a page that I felt was important enough where, okay, I'm going to put a crappy scan in there, and shame on me, because that's not what these books are about. But again, Joseph and I get to make all the executive decisions here, and it's where we can decide, we can where what's going to be cut and what's not. But again, it was more than normal of the scans, and that's why in the book you sometimes see a variance in qualities, because again, different scanners have different settings and different, again, quality levels and lenses and everything. And but we try with all of our books, we try to do as many of the scans ourselves as possible. Joseph and I both have an Epson scanner, and my Epson scanner has more miles on it than I do. It's I've lugged it around with me to all sorts of places, and I try not to do that because it's not healthy for the scanner. It's not healthy for me. It's but so we try to do it ourselves to maintain that degree of quality control. But like I said, there's times when it's just not practical, and you got to decide how well the practicality fits into the big picture here.
I mean, Bolland is a hugely popular artist. There's no question. But as I'd seen previous art, and then as I went through the book, it's surprising how clean his artwork is. As if you're comparing this to, say, there's not a lot of, I want to say, process. His finished art really is so clean. Did that have a factor at all in your decision to make this book, or you love Bolland, you wanted to pursue it?
I mean, it is what it is, and yeah, yes, it does. Because personally, I like to see whiteout and blue line pencils. To me, seeing like a Walt Kelly original where he has blue shit all over the place as far as to form the characters. Brian's stuff is so clean. It's this far away from looking like a black and white, and and it's I don't want to say it's not as exciting, but that's just Brian. I mean, Brian is clean. He his line. I mean, everything. I mean, if there's whiteout being used, he even uses a whiteout, so it just he doesn't just slop it on. I mean, he is as meticulous with his whiteout as he is with his ink. But yeah, I mean, it's an aesthetic thing, and since these books are about original art, for them to reek of original art makes them cool. And right now, the only thing that makes them look like original art, especially on Killing Joke, is you have the 4 registration marks around the board. And not that everybody even knows what registration marks are anymore, but it's they're very optically, flat's not the right word, but they're not as exciting as when you see paste. I mean, the best part about some of the Killing Joke pages is Richard Starkings did letter the first 14 or 15 pages using the crack and peel lettering. So he did crack and peel lettering, and you can see, if you look on the scans, you'll see a little bit of the show through of the Brian art that none of us will ever see, because there's lettering on top of it. And then I guess at some point, and Joseph can elaborate on this possibly, is Brian said, well, why the hell am I drawing this stuff if you're going to letter over it? So at some point, Richard and Brian collaborate a little bit closer, and I believe Richard lettered the boards or left the room so Brian didn't have to waste his time drawing stuff. But so there's a lot of nice telling tales with this original art. You see things that things were in transition, like the page size and the crack and peel lettering, and even the numbering of the pages. The number is on the pages of all the original art, but it didn't make it to the book. And it's fun when you look at the printed original book here. There's areas where you can see how DC's production department did some fixes in the little corners instead of putting the numbers there. So there's fun little things that you can see when you immerse yourself in Killing Joke the way Joseph and I did these last few months and years here.
I mean, one of the things that a lot of people probably weren't aware of is that there was a format change about 6 or 7 pages into the project. It was originally conceived as a graphic novel, so the pages were drawn to those dimensions. And then, of course, Prestige format was born, and a decision was made to switch Killing Joke to this new format. So you can actually, in the book, you can actually see that there are different versions of those pages because they were resized. And that's something that most people weren't aware of and won't know until they actually see this book.
I mean, the book was originally set up to be in this format. This was a successful format for DC. I think they started using this format around 83, and this was one of their only options until Frank came along with Dark Knight and Frank did the Prestige. And so they, so Brian originally drew for this format, and, it ended up in this format. And, and for some silly reason, the art for this is bigger than the art for that. But that's a whole nother thing that we don't need to delve into here. But yeah, there was a lot of evolution of comics and comics manufacturing, comics printing and coloring going on during this period. And Killing Joke shows some of these things. If you dig around, you can kind of go, okay, what's going on with the color reproduction on this? What's going on with the format and the paper usage and the design of the book? Because DC was trying to be forward thinking and think about the newsstands, because the newsstand wasn't a given back in 88. It was a fairly new thing for comic companies to produce product for the newsstand. And so Killing Joke went through some of the gyrations as far as the logo that Richard Starkings created that really was never used. It was used on some placards and some advertising, but it was never used in the book because DC all of a sudden started trying to do more of a trade dress that was for the not mass market, but for the bookstore market. And that changed, and the indicia and all that stuff that used to be, used to open up a comic, you had your indicia on the lower part of page 1, and you had titles and the credit. And with these other books, Dark Knight included, in this book, they started putting the credits on the inside front cover or the inside back cover and the indicia information there. And it was just a sign of how comics were evolving and stuff. So, and again, this book has a lot of the stink of that, or the remnants of evolution, for lack of a better word.
Did those original Killing Joke pages, did one person have all of them, or did you find them?
No, they were originally back in '88. They were largely sold through a shop in the UK, and from there scattered to their various locations around the world. So yeah, Brian, as Bob mentioned, Brian had given a few as gifts, but other than that, the rest were all sold.
But the original oversized, the original graphic novel pages, did one collector have those first 6 pages or 7 pages?
No, they again, they'd all been scattered over the years. So not even Brian hadn't really kept anything. I mean, at this point, it's been a number of decades, and I mean, to this day, people still contact me and say, "Hey, does Brian have any Killing Joke pages he wants to sell?" No, at this point, they're all long gone.
He'd love to.
He wants to sell them. He just doesn't have any, so he's more than happy to sell you a Killing Joke page. But yeah.
Wow, that's. I was really interested in the paper shift in the book between when you went to the color work. I mean, it's a great idea, but what was the thinking behind it, and what did you hope would be accomplished by changing to the? It's almost the same weight, but you've got a gloss.
It's one of those things where, like I said earlier, we can write even though there's some boundaries that have been established, but not in writing for what these books are supposed to be about. There's also the ability to violate those things every now and then. And this was something where, as much as the desire to replicate the artwork so it looks like the original art is the prime directive, we know that different paper stock reproduces color better. I mean, the vibrant colors, the truer colors and stuff. And so if you look at the book, I think there's 32 pages, something like that, using this paper, and most of those are some of Brian's painted pieces. And the painted pieces, yeah, we could have used the same paper, and yeah, it might have had a little more of an authentic look, but then it wouldn't, because, like I said, the paper that's used traditionally in these books and in our books, it's more porous. The ink seeps into the paper rather than sits on top. And so, though we didn't use a coated stock, and a coated stock where it can be heavily glossy, and then the ink sits on top of it, and you get the pop and the vibrancy and stuff, it was decided that we do these pages with the different paper stock, and trying to make it so it still had the weight. I believe the paper stock is 150 gram for the color section, and I believe it's 160 for the rest of the stuff. So it was done with the intention of reproducing it with greater accuracy and representing it as true as possible, knowing the downside was, it's not on this flat drawing paper. So it was just a judgment call that why not? Again, we did it a little bit when one of our prior books, in the Sandman Overture. We did some pages in Sandman Overture where we're not just, we reproduced J.H. Williams stuff the way it should be on the flat paper at actual size. We reproduced the color stuff with word balloons and everything. And we figured, since that wasn't the original artwork, we could cheat and use this paper. But, a lot of it is just for reproduction's sake. I mean, again, the paper used in these books just does not reproduce colors as truly and as vibrantly as one would like. So we figured we'd break some of the rules a little bit and just represent it like that. And it was appropriate, and because we had a lot of Brian's colored pieces, and why not reproduce them so they pop? And we're guilty of using the wrong paper, but oh well,
No, it's exciting to see, to see a break in the established format, right? And to see something taking a chance, right?
It's hard, and we did this also in Brian's digital work. We violated all the rules of this format, and we decided to put some of Brian's stuff that wasn't done on pen and ink; it was done on a computer. But since this is a book about Brian and a tribute to Brian, since this is how Brian's been drawing for the last 25 years, we felt it was appropriate that we showed this, that hey, here's where Brian is now. It's not the stuff that these books are about. It's not about the original art, but it's also just showing people that hey, here's what Brian's doing now. He's doing this stuff. Instead of using a brush, instead of using a pen, he's using a stylus on a tablet, and it's just another tool he's using. But again, it doesn't leave or produce the original artwork that these books are supposed to represent. And again, shame on us. I'll blame it on Joseph, because he sounds like somebody I should blame for this.
When I first read the description of the book and it said there was a digital section, I was concerned. The way it's worked in is just wonderful. The story that Brian's providing about his digital transition and the way he worked it in, it's really great.
And it made Brian happy too. Oops, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it made Brian happy too, because it says about Brian, and we do everything we can to facilitate the vision and the desires of the artist, and to not include something like this in the book would have been, I mean, Brian looks they look forward. I mean, Brian's not wallowing in what he did 40 years ago. He has grown as an artist. He uses different tools. He's evolved in a lot of different ways. And to not show anything on any of his art past 1989, 99, sorry about that. I lost a decade somewhere in the late 90s. It would have been wrong. Here's a book about Brian Bolland, but what's he been doing for the last 25 years? Shit, I don't know. But at least it's touched upon. It's not touched upon as lavishly as we would like. But again, we felt there was a balancing act there. If we touch upon it without going overboard, it fits. And thank you. I appreciate your comments on that. We felt it was appropriate that it was there and they're balanced correctly. The bulk of the book, there's 260 something pages that have artwork that's done on paper, and so showing representation of his digital stuff it's appropriate, and it makes the book deeper and everything.
I did want to ask about the. Now, excuse me if I don't have the right term. Maybe the contrast of the image. I don't see much aging in the art. I'm not seeing much yellowing or tanning. Were you adjusting the contrast at all when you put the book together, or?
No, I don't know if it shouldn't be because of the paper, because much of Brian's paper is the same paper that's provided to DC to the artist. So because it's all DC imprinted paper, so most of it's DC. No, it's just I don't know. I mean, I was just looking the other day at the Killing Joke stuff and not Killing Jokes, the Dark Knight material from Frank, and a lot of those pages are extremely dingy, for lack of a better word, but no, I don't know. I don't know if it's because these haven't been framed or sitting in the closet or what, but no, I mean, there's some pages that are stained. I believe there's some of the Justice League story arc, there's some discoloration on some of those, but no, we try not to manipulate, because as well as I do that you can manipulate the shit out of anything nowadays, and I could make something look like it's brand new, or we could remove all the signatures by the artist or different things on the pages to put them in. But once you cross that line, where do you start? How manipulative do you want to be? So we do our best. Is it perfect? No, but we do our best to represent the art as it currently exists. And again, we try to minimize any liberties we take, or minimize any enhancements that we do, because this is the way it is, and it's and the same with and again, I can't tell you why the page coloration didn't shift as much as most of the books out there. But
it is quite surprising that the Killing Joke pages, I mean, I've handled quite a few of them at this point, are consistently white. I think it's partly to do with the quality of the paper stock that DC were using, but as Bob said, I think also framing has something to do with it. But we took out a few pages that had been framed, and there was minimal to no yellowing. So
wow.
And yes, we've represented it as the pages appear today.
Awesome. First off, Josh Beekman, I love his design. I love how the design has been consistent across the Gallery Edition line. I think it's wonderful. How I can't just pull this book out of that, because it's been a long history of this design through all the Gallery Editions. How did that come about? How did those design choices come? The spine, the DC logo, the way the cover is put together, the chapter dividers, it's very uniform and it works really well.
I mean, I've known Josh, I think I first used him on a book in the 90s somewhere. He was the protege and Richard Bruning's assistant back before Richard worked as the art director of DC Comics. So I've known Richard designed a few of our earlier books centuries ago. And then so I evolved and went with Josh, who was his assistant. and stuff. But Josh and I put a lot of work into the first book, because the first book we knew was going to somewhat set a template. We had and Josh is really good with colors. So before we do any book, he creates a color scheme and theme for the book. We decide where we want to go color wise, and he develops 2 or 3 color palettes that complement each other and work well together, and we use that in the book. But the books from the very beginning were meant to be a series, and to be a series that visually had a lot of similar clues to them as visual clues. And Josh is an extremely skilled and a clean designer. I mean, I like his style. It's nothing flamboyant. It's nothing that goes over the top. But he's really good at it. And again, he's really good at the color. And that's where, like I said, after Josh and I worked on some of the initial, hey, where do we want to go with all this? How do we want to design the basic look of the book? He then takes it from there, and I follow his lead. We joust about things every now and then, because that's just the way it works. But he's been a real good anchor. And even though I don't want to say looks redundant, I mean, there's a style that's there, but it's a style that's extremely it works. It's strong design work. I don't even know how else to say it. It's just, and I like the style. So it goes back to, again, to choices that Joseph and I get to make, because it's what we like to see in the book. And yes, Josh has done a stellar job, and I thank you for noticing that, and I'm sure Josh will appreciate that also, because he's these designers. I mean, Josh also developed one of the DC logos, the swirl one that was used in the 90s and later than that. So he was the designer of that. So he has a lot of things to his credit, but they don't get credited. He's not known for doing X, Y, and Z, even though he did. He's done numerous logo designs for DC Books and other companies, but he's designs outside of the comic industry also. But he's just again, a very, very strong designer.
So it was right with the Batman Kelly Jones. That was the first book that was released, but was that the first book you worked on?
That was our first gallery edition book, yes.
Sorry,
yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
And that was 2014. That just time flies when you're having fun. But yes, that was about 10 years ago or so.
And it was developing that you decided that you wanted to have a consistent design for all the books going forward, or was that still in play until the second book?
Yeah, it was from the beginning, because there was a look, because we of course wanted to, how do you differentiate yourself from something like the IDW artist editions when they made such an impact? And we didn't want to, how different can you make a book that has the similar content? So our goal was to create somewhat of a different, different name, a different style. It's just subtle stuff. It's nothing that's going to make any difference. But a lot of it was our design. A lot of it, I'm a big fan of the curved spine. Rather than a flat spine book, all of our books have the rounded spine, which just drives China nuts. Because it takes a piece of equipment they don't have. So we actually developed a way to do a fake rounded spine, because they don't have the equipment to do a 20-inch spine, but it's so we, again, we tried to create an identity, and so we did the gallery edition banding on the faux banding on the book, and did some things that we knew we could repeat, but would give the book a look and an imprint or logo without it being gaudy or anything, And then the same with the circular gallery edition logos that we've created for each of the books that has the signature of the artist involved. So they were just little things that we knew we could repeat, but not repeat to the point where it's like, oh shit, what a bunch of lazy asses. They're doing the same thing for every book. So yeah, of course we're using some of the same cues from all the books, but they're different, and they're appropriate, and they're thematically colored. So not just on the cover itself, but when you start breaking into the inside, there's colors, basic colors and complementary colors. And, I'm not even skilled enough to explain that, but Josh is really good at that. So that's why, when in doubt, have somebody who knows what the hell they're doing do things. And Josh definitely is in that situation.
even your actually, I even appreciated your solicitation because you actually went through, listed what pages, what stories, where they were from, how many pages they would be. You tried to give as much information as possible for this. Was that over your concern, as you said at the beginning of the call, because people may just think Killing Joke and what else?
Part of that, but if we're going to have a title that big, I think we have to kind of stand behind it. But no, it's really hard. I mean, would be very easy, and I'm not known for my copywriting, but it would have been very easy just to do descriptive copy and then go, yeah, here's Killing Joke and a bunch of other stuff, but it really doesn't touch upon what was in the book. I mean, we got input from people that said, oh, it just has Killing Joke in it. So no, it doesn't have just Killing Joke. So how do you counter that without, how do you counter that correctly? And so fortunately we're, listing it, especially like on the little placard that's on the book, we tried to make it so we're not asking somebody to buy the book blindly. It's like, okay, maybe you can't open the book because it's in shrink wrap, but hey, here's what's inside of it. And it is, yeah, we cheated. We called it Killing Joke because why not? When you have the opportunity to call something Killing Joke that has such name value and recognition, you'd be foolish not to do that. I mean, not that Brian Bolland doesn't, but Brian Bolland and Killing Joke together, there's not too many things you can think of that would exceed that. Maybe the Bible or no, but it would just, but Killing Joke had to be in it, but it came with caveats. It came with, oh shit, how else do we define what's inside of this book without turning it into, something that's I want to say too wordy, but yeah, so it was just something that was necessary and something that we thought and hope that people would appreciate, that we're very proud of what we were able to gather for this book and the representation of Brian's art that's in here, and it's and like I said, we surprised ourselves when we ended up with 280 pages, and the velocity that happened. I think we gained what do they call that? Just the momentum was incredible when it was getting really close. Hey, I want to wrap up this book. I got a book map now. It's 189 pages, and all of a sudden shit started coming in, and it's like, I'm not. And Joseph and I, we've had this discussion numerous times. Where Joseph said, when's the cutoff period for the artwork? I go, shit. Not until it goes to press. And there were one or two pieces that got squeaked in at the last minute because, I'm not going to say no to this, certain things, especially when you want a book that has, the pieces are all good, So it was a fun process, a painful process, but, it's, it's, again, a lot of time wise, it shows Brian's early stuff. It shows his later stuff. It covers about a 20-year window when Brian was doing his stuff, and it just opened up the door to a lot of things, and the artwork was out there, so we took it, So sorry, Joseph, I don't mean to be yapping like I am here.
I noticed in the colophon, which I was thrilled to see, was that you included print run numbers. Is this? I wish every publisher, every book would celebrate the print run, and you've got it right in there, which it was great to see. 2,500 regular copies, the 500 of the UK cover, and 250 of the signed. Is that what made you put that in there?
I don't know. It's just, again, I think it goes back because this is a special book, but I think I saw something like that in a book that John Fleskes did. I think it was, one of his Art Adams books that he came out with recently. I saw that and I went, oh, that's kind of cool, because I'm not comfortable with calling a book where there's 2,500 a limited edition, even though technically, everything, I have a limited edition of 50,000. Okay, it's still limited, but I just felt it was transparent, and it allowed us to let people know what they're buying into, because it's not cheap. It's not a book where they're spending $3 on or something. So it's if you're asking people to spend their good money on it, you should give them something in return. And if part of that is the mystique and the reality of, hey, this is something special. This is something that's on so many different levels. And to add to that, it is something where there's only 2,500 copies of it. And and again, does it have any value? I have no idea. As far as does it really help help people make the decision? I mean, we have an interesting market for these books, anyways. They're not everybody's cup of tea, but if you like original art, shit. And unless you have the money to spend to buy original art on that level, this is the next best thing. And to be able to gather the artwork and put it in one place like we did for this, and for I keep mentioning Dark Knight, it's there's never going to be a cooler representation of Killing Joke and Dark Knight than what we've provided here, and we're very proud that we were able to do that, because it isn't going to get any easier to produce these books. As time goes by, the artwork and other things either dissipates more or gets into the hands of people where you won't have access to them, because you can't get into their vaults or something. But it's so we're very happy to have this opportunity to be able to produce these books and to make them look as cool as they do and stuff.
Will the UK edition, will any copies of the UK cover be available from your website?
It's possible. It's not in the near future, because we want to give the UK market the chance to absorb them. But it's like everything graffiti designers has done. There's things that trickle around, and so who knows what could happen there.
And so I guess I should backtrack. How did the UK cover come about?
We traditionally, with these books, we do something called the regular edition, which is not a very flattering word to use. We do a regular and a variant edition. And that was done years from the very beginning for a number of reasons, but it wasn't to take advantage of the variant cover trend that doesn't seem to disappear here. But we did that, and then on this one it just made sense because Brian is so based and established in the UK to offer it something special to the UK marketplace. It's something that Brian was comfortable with, and we just thought it could be fun, and it gave us a chance to do another cover for the book. But so it's just something a little, again, no specific agenda, except it just seemed appropriate. And probably Joseph lobbied for it too, because he has his interest there. But no, it just seemed like the right thing to do, since that's where Brian is, and that's where his roots are, and that's where it just made sense.
It may have also had something to do with the fact that we had an impasse about which cover to use. So this way we both got our way.
Oh yeah, there's Joe. He's sharing our secrets now. But yes. When you have an impasse, find the way around it here.
Right from the beginning, as you say, you had a regular cover, you had a variant, and you've also done a signed slipcase edition. The slipcase, you've changed the binding a bit. I think you've got a quarter-bound cloth spine, hot stamping. The slipcase, what made you move towards that as an exclusive, I guess?
We've done that with all of the books. We've had signed editions except for one of them, but we've done signed editions for all the books we've produced. I'm trying to make sure that's true. Yes. So we've offered that. I mean, it's just, I'm personally am a big fan of signed books. And Graffiti Designs also has been producing signed books since like 1985 or something like that. And it's just something that's in my blood and something that I like for myself. And so I'm only doing it for myself, and then I just happen to offer it to other people too. But it just seemed good, and Brian was willing to work with us on that, and so it's just nice because we know there's an audience out there that likes signed books, and like I said, if nothing else, I know I do. But there is you know, because Brian doesn't make a whole lot of appearances, and even if he does, to have a book like this signed by Brian, in my opinion, just makes it something special. And so we've been very happy and that we've been able to produce these books in a signed edition also.
No, the overall quality of your sign, and I think it's wonderful. I really appreciate the changes you make, and even from like a added value, it's just a next level above the regular edition. They're really beautiful.
No,
I
thank you.
mentioned I'm a fan of print runs. I also collect French art editions, and they almost always specify what the print run is. Maybe they've hand numbered or something, just to make it feel special. You know, something in exclusive. And you're right, 50,000. I've still seen exclusive on items that are 50,000, but 2,500 is not a big print run in the grand scheme of things. But you seem to have always printed with a plan of keeping them available. I think you've had very few sellouts at this point of the regular editions. Is that still in your mind going forward? I think when we talked years ago, you saw this as an archival opportunity as well, to preserve the artwork and to keep it available. Is that something you want to do with this? And are there future volumes that you're working on?
That's a loaded question on a lot of levels. You know, as far as the limitation on this, we just felt it was realistic. We recognized the popularity of the Rebellion edition of Brian's 2000 AD stuff. And if anybody has one of those, I'd be more than happy to relieve them of that, because I missed it. But so we were aware of that. I've been known to produce always too many things, so I have inventory, and so that factors into it more on the business end of it, is just you know, how much, because you know, once you start printing something, to print an extra 1,000 or whatever is relatively cheap than to just do 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 right off the bat here, you know. So there were a number of reasons that led to that, but we just felt that this would take care of the needs of the marketplace. It likely they'll disappear sooner than I expected, and I'm not sure where it'll go from there. But you know, I'll be more than happy if it sells out. You know, and
Bob hasn't mentioned how much he complains about how much storage space they take up, which may be a factor.
They take big warehouse, and we downsize. And this answers your second question a little bit. Graffiti Designs downsized a couple of years ago. You know, semi-retirement. You know, my wife says fully retired, but you know, I'm not worried. So we're selectively looking at things to do in the future. Graffiti Designs, it does still exist. We want to produce more books. You know, there's things we are looking at as far as the future, because I like this format, would like to do more books like this. And it's like I said, it boils down to, again, going back to things I said earlier, you know, what artwork is accessible, where we could do something, where we could do a presentation like this that people would really like, and everything. And so, you know, what the future holds, yes, we plan on doing more books. Nothing's specific right now. Nothing's in the works at the moment. There's a lot of you know, things that are being thought about, but you know, it's and I'm not sure if the world needs you know, these books produced multiple books a month, because it's just not sustainable on so many different levels here. But like I said, I'm definitely open to suggestions, and open to, you know, if somebody dumped a bunch of artwork in my lap, I'd have to do something with it. I just have to, out of responsibility, for no other reason. Yeah.
Which artists do you represent, Joseph?
Brian Bolland, Dave Gibbons, Frank Quitely, Mark Buckingham, Duncan Vigredo.
So there's a volume for each of them, at least, right? I mean, no comment. Just as a general interest, because actually those are all artists I'd love to see something done, but that we don't see? As an example, does Duncan Fegredo, does he keep his original art? Do art? Let me backtrack on that. Because of the environment now today, do current artists like Duncan, does he do high quality scans of his artwork every page anyways?
Yes and no. A lot of artists don't actually physically send the artwork in for publication now, but as I've just so as a result, they're scanning at a sort of high enough resolution that you can print from it. But as I've discovered, quite often the pages are cropped and cleaned up, and sometimes not actually scanned in color. I think that when you're scanning for publication for the kind of books that we do, you've got a different set of criteria than when your aim is for publication, printing and publication. So in answer, yes, they do make high-res scans. Unfortunately, usually not suitable for use in a gallery edition book. I mean, it's a shame that I think there are a number of artists now who have one eye on the future and therefore do make scans before they sell any artwork make a 600 DPI scan with a view to a potential book publication in the future, but most of them just regard it as a pain and takes up storage space. Why bother? Which is unfortunate.
The files are huge when you scan them at 600 DPI in full color. You all of a sudden have and you don't want to compress them. There is an LZW compression that is lost. You don't lose data, but if you JPEG them or anything, you can get a smaller file, but you lose data. So it's not real practical. But even though it'd be great, I mean, I foolishly have lobbied with DC and other people saying, hey, why don't you have all of your artists turn in your artwork like this instead of like this? And, it's just, again, realistically, archiving comic art, there's not really money in it. And so it has no reason to exist. I guess that's where I'm going with that, with my cynical nature here and everything. But it's, if I had my way, if I was at DC and Marvel, I'd say, shit, guys, send all of your artwork in at 600 DPI in color and see who whines the loudest to break it. But it doesn't seem to be practical. And it's a shame because it just makes our options a lot less, because it would be nice to have a library of things to choose from, and it doesn't exist, and it's just one of the things here. So
you haven't been exclusively working with DC because you've had the one book with Terry Moore. But is that a relationship you would want to continue, or do you want to reach out and maybe expand into other publishers?
I mean, it's always a possibility.
Right.
But the hard part about these books is how do you do them so you're being somewhat financially responsible? These are not, if you factor in time and effort, I would be comfortable in saying these books are at best marginally profitable, regardless of what rumors may have been going around. People are getting rich off of producing these books. There may be ways to do that, but when you sell 2,000 or 3,000 copies of a book, it's a real hard financial net. And then that is the same thing when you start dealing with, I did the Terry Moore book because I have a good relationship with him and I like his stuff, and he has a strong audience. So that book is very successful, though it didn't have the name value of Killing Joke or Dark Knight. He has his audience and his stuff is great. And, there are things like that I'm looking at. But again, you have to do that realistic juggling act. I'm not even say financial, because I'm really good at losing money. I'm a trained professional on that level. But, we do things we want to do, and hopefully it's theoretically things subsidize other things or whatever. But, there are books that I would like to do. And it's a matter of, is there an audience out there that cares? You know, if you did a Carmine Infantino flash book, do people care? I mean, I know I do. I would do a Carmine Infantino or a Gil Kane or a Murphy Anderson at a drop of a hat. How, and I'm not even using the word commercial because, you know, these books aren't commercial, but, you know, would there be a market for books like that? And I don't know. I mean, hopefully one of these days I'll have an opportunity to try and say, you know, because a lot of these you don't have an answer until you do it. And if you lose, you lose. But you have your eyes open when you're jumping into the pit here and stuff. But you know, there's a lot of things out there, and again, a lot of if it doesn't have to be DC or Marvel. I definitely would be open to it if it fell into whatever parameters and criteria that I have in my head here and stuff.
You did the Amanda Connor book, the first one we'd seen with a female creator. Was that a factor at all, or was just the opportunity was there, the art was great, and you thought that's a great book?
It was the opportunity. I mean, I like Amanda's stuff, and we had an opportunity. We were hoping, and we had thoughts on a second book that was because this is Harley Quinn void, for lack of a better word, and she's known for, and she did a lot of Harley Quinn covers and interior pages. So, you know, we would like to, and we gave thought to doing a second book, but you know, there wasn't any, we have to find a female artist. That wasn't really factored into it. It was a plus because it made us seem more well-rounded and stuff, but it wasn't, you know, and again, it also goes back to the relationship thing. My wife and I have a real good relationship with Jimmy and Amanda, and it's and also Amanda drew my wife and I into her Silk Spectre story. So, you know, I had to find a way to, you know, include those pages, and it just, you know, for ego fulfillment or whatever you want to call it here. But, you know, no, Jimmy and Amanda are great people, good friends. And it's fun working with not just associates, but people that you can call friends and stuff.
The focus has been sort of, you know, 80s onward. And you've just mentioned there, you know, is there an interest in earlier work? Have you been gathering scans? I mean, or do you just feel that there's a certain period where art is available and you're continuing to mine that?
I have a lot of scans. I haven't counted them, and I wouldn't, but let's say just to put a number, let's say I have 10,000 scans. So I have a lot of scans because, like I said before, when the opportunity arises, you know, and whether I'll ever have enough to do a book. I mean, I've gathered scans for Wally Wood's Daredevil material. Personally, man, nothing would make me happier than to have a book like this of you know, Daredevil 4 through 10 with Wally or Bob Powell and Wally Wood stuff. But you know, the chances of that ever happening are very unlikely. But I figured if I have access to being able to scan something like that, I'm going to do it. So a lot of my scans, I mean, there's things that I won't scan. I won't mention any names, but there's things, you know, you have to be realistic. I mean, if I had nothing else to do with my life, I'd scan everything that moves. But for some reason, there's not a reality on that. So I've been selective, but you know, I have a lot of scans. I have a lot of Neil Adams stuff. I have, you know, some Bernie Wrightson. I have, a lot of things are out there. And I have gathered, you know, some of the older Batmans by Jerry Robinson and stuff. I've gathered some of that because, again, nothing would make me happier than to see a book with the golden age Batman art of Jerry Robinson and or Bob Kane's, that kind of stuff. But you know, a lot of it is just, you know, pie in the sky, you know, and because gathering the scans is one of the factors that determines what books are done, you know. So, you know, again, so yes, I have overscanned in my lifetime. And, but, you know, again, they may not be around to scan, or, you know, they can disappear very, very easily. So it's, you know, sorry, I'm not I'm answering questions in a very long-winded fashion here. So.
Have you given any thought to doing a book that's not complete stories?
Yeah, no, yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, again, I haven't drawn a line. I haven't said no, but it just, it started with the Kelly Jones stuff, and, the stories were there, the Batman arc. So, when we did Sandman, it wasn't complete stories because a lot of it was, just trying to have representational pages in there. And we kind of did the same with the Sandman book, the first Sandman book, where we had all of issue 1 represented, but then, figure, okay, well, how can we make some kind of how can we pace the book and have it make sense to exist when you have 75 issues and all this other stuff? So we did 1 page from every issue, and then we did all of the P. Craig Russell Dream Hunter Sandman stuff, and it made sense. So it's just like I said, it's really nice only having to answer to ourselves, So it's not like we have to go to our board of directors or something like that. Joseph and I can go, yeah, this makes sense to us. Whether it makes sense to other people doesn't really matter. But we can find a rhythm to it and a pacing. I mean, even with the Brian Bolland book, is once we started getting the stuff, it's like how do we want to assemble this? What kind of pacing do we want to put in there? And then all of a sudden it started evolving and made sense. All of a sudden we had Killing Joke, of course, was always going to be the feature, and then it's a matter of how do we show everything else. And he has all the story arcs are in it from Justice League 200, was it Justice League 200, and then Detective or Batman 400, and the Mystery in Space story, which is the first full story he did for DC Comics. And then we had all these covers and other things, and we tried to do them more in a chronological fashion to show a progression. Brian started with the Green Lantern and Justice League covers in the early 80s, and then evolved to Camelot, and then started doing, and Killing Joke was after Camelot, even though we put Killing Joke first, that's a story, so it was in our story section. So it makes sense. And like I said, maybe it doesn't make sense to normal people, but I tried to find some kind of logic, some kind of pacing, some kind of continuity, even though it wasn't a story of continuity. It was a progression of Brian's art and stuff like that. So like I said, it's hard. I don't like to just slap pages together and put them in a book. So found a way.
Most times the grading criteria is, do we think this would be a cool book, and would we want to own it? And that's where it pretty much starts.
We're very self-centered, and all we care about is making ourselves happy. And and we're fortunate that other people are willing to participate in our dreams here and everything. But no, I mean, that is it. I mean, Joseph and I mean, for some weird reason, we're on the same page on a lot of things, and it really helps. Working together and having a sounding board where we can both throw things out at each other, and it's to the betterment of the end product. If it was just my vision, I mean, who gives a shit? You don't want to see you want to see other people's vision. You want to see Brian's vision. You want to see the vision of the artist, but you want to see something that is as interesting, as cool as possible. And that's been our unwritten goal when we produce these books. And like I said, very happy that we have been able to play with Ronan. And some of the stuff we've done, the Kelly Jones stuff is just incredible. And Kelly seems to be more popular now than he was when we did the Batman book. But the Batman and the Deadman books are two of my favorites. I mean, they all have their own little unique color to them. The Michael Turner book, I mean, who would produce a book off the pencils? But that is the final art. That's the only art that exists for these books, and that's how the books were reproduced in the comics. That's the art that existed. And doing the Michael Turner stuff was an unexpected surprise, because it's like, man, this is what a great opportunity, and this stuff looks incredible. So.
When you did that book, were you always thinking, I want to add the lettering, or did you maybe sort of start to put it together and then say, no, this needs the lettering?
Once again, it goes back to no rules being out there, but kind of like it's the Wild West. We've been able to create our own rules, and we know there are some books out there with the lettering not included because it preserves the integrity of the art. Da 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 da. And I have mixed feelings about that. I think I saw one of the IDW. I think it was a Mike Mignola book, or it was Mike's stuff without the lettering. I personally did not enjoy it all. I enjoyed Mike's artwork, but it's not that these are books meant to be read. Anybody who reads these big books, they're a fool. They're asking to be hurt. You know, they're either going to strain something, it's going to hit them in the head when they're in bed. I mean, it's not what I would recommend. But I like, to me, it puts the panels and everything into a context. And I think we've only done one book where we didn't include the lettering. I believe the J.H. Williams, The Sandman, but we cheated, because at the end of the book, we do have the fully colored and the lettered version. So if somebody really wants to read it, they can. But, you know, catching J.H. Williams pages and, you know, some of them having, you know, a lot of tonal qualities to them and some of them having color. I mean, this is how he produced these pages. And to be able to capture him in that form is a once in a lifetime chance. I mean, it was just a really, I mean, J.H.'s his artwork is incredible. His diversity of styles and mediums and stuff was definitely on display with the Sandman Overture book. But no, I mean, again, I like the lettering. I mean, would it be cool to see Killing Joke without, you know, to go under the overlays and scrape off the lettering and shit and see what's going on there? Yeah, but you know, in most books you don't have that chance. Most books that we've done were pre-digital. You know, nowadays you can separate the digital from the artwork very easily. Back then it was, you know, most of it was in the artwork. I believe we did some of this adding the lettering to Ronin, because a lot of the Ronin, some of the pages weren't lettered, they were on overlays, and so we incorporated those on a few of the pages. Again, I can't remember since that was a few years ago, but like I said, I like including the lettering in the story, because that is part of the art, especially, again, older original art, where, you know, you buy a piece of original art, you got lettering on it and you got the whole shebang, and so it's again represents that. But yeah, on the Michael Turner stuff, I just, you know, I can't even tell you what the thought process was back then. But you know, we had the opportunity to include the letter. I think visually it adds a real nice stark contrast. You know, you have this really hard black, you know, logo type and lettering, and then you have this real soft gray tone, you know, artwork. And I think it provides just a real interesting visual, because a gray page looks gray. You know, it just, and no offense to penciled pages, but it doesn't, you know, there's no visual, nothing to draw your eye around. You have no, you know, blacks, you have nothing to, you know, your eyes move differently. But like I said, it's, you know, my fallback position is personal preference, and you know, that's the big story here: personal preference.
I do remember actually the first time when this came up, and I went to Bob thinking he was going to argue otherwise. I felt very strongly that lettering should be included, and was surprised to discover Bob thought exactly the same. So yeah, no argument there.
I'm with both of you. I think pro lettering for sure. I think it should be added whenever possible. But
I mean, IDW did a big favor to us. So when they did that Mike Mignola book, you know, it helped me say, oh, okay, I like it. I like the art by itself, but I like it better with the copy in it. And you know, so it's I thank IDW for that, and it just made it, you know, they were the guinea pig and helped help us make a decision that, you know, who knows how long we would have been wallowing over that if it wasn't for somebody doing it first, and we went, yeah, we don't want to go that route. But you know, again, that could change tomorrow if the situation is one where it's like, okay, we have this virgin artwork here, do we want to reproduce it like that? And you know, so it's a work in progress as far as, you know, what direction and what options we have in the future here and everything.
Joseph, can you tell me how the two of you came together and started on the endeavor?
the origin story.
Yeah.
I met Bob. He won't remember this, but I met Bob at a convention in the UK in about '87. I was a big fan of Graffiti's products. I collected the T-shirts, bought the limited edition books, etc. And then I think around 2013, I think it was, Bob had, oh, actually there is actually another part of this story, which is that, but I actually bought my first Killing Joke page from Mr. Chapman here.
Oh, geez.
Took me much inveigling and whining and bribes, but he did eventually break down, and that's how I acquired my first Killing Joke page. And then a few years later, like I said, around 2012 or 2013, he contacted me out of the blue and said, you know, I'm thinking of doing a line of books like this. And one of the things that we discussed was Killing Joke. And I think we discovered we had a lot of ideas in common. I definitely always liked Graffiti's products and sort of felt like, well, if I was going to have any involvement with something, you know, something that I myself buy, it sort of made total sense to me. And I think after a few conversations, Bob asked me if I would be interested in working with him. And I said, absolutely. And that's kind of how we got started. And so the conversation sort of started with Killing Joke, and here we are now, what is it, 11 years later.
I mean, Ronin and Frank Miller was a big catch. Ronin and Dark Knight, did you have a previous relationship, either one of you, with Frank Miller? Or?
I mean, I've known and I've worked with Frank since before Killing for Dark Knight, but with Dark Knight we produced the book for DC Comics, and that's one of the first that is the first collected book like that for DC ever. We produced it for DC rather than licensing like we normally do, because that's what DC wanted us to do. So, but yeah, I mean, Frank, again, our paths have crossed numerous times, but we worked on him extensively, worked with him extensively on the Dark Knight book. And then that just evolved into all sorts of things. And we ended up putting together, for Marvel, we put the Elektra Lives Again book together, because that was a book that was sitting around for about 5 years. And Frank was busy doing, I think, RoboCop 2 and stuff, so it never got finished. And I believe Mike Hobson at Marvel contacted me and said, Bob, can you drag this out of Frank or something like that, because it wasn't finished. And there was old artwork and old blue lines around that DC asked if I'd be interested in doing that. So Frank and I and Lynn all had the opportunity to work together to make Elektra Lives Again be the book that Frank always wanted to see. That's why it's a nicer than normal Marvel book. No slight to Marvel, but we put a nice creamy. We made, again, I was the facilitator for Frank's vision. Frank wanted to see this on creamy paper. We did that. We did real sophisticated, it wasn't sophisticated colors, but it's still pre-digital, but it was taking Lynn's old blue lines, and many of them had, let's say, shrunk, for lack of a better word, because that's what blue lines tend to do. And we had to mate them up with the black line. But, we were able to produce the book. We got Frank to rejigger the book and add some pages and everything like that, and we were able to do that book, and it was a Marvel book, but again, we were credited as the producers and the designers of it, and we got to do the signed edition of that. But so my relationship with Frank goes back many years, and a lot of things have changed, and it's always nice when friendships can remain. And so when it came to doing Dark Knight and Ronin, I was very happy that Frank was on board with us and helped us do a signed edition and provided us with some of the material, especially for Ronin. It was, the Ronin book definitely was, it could not have happened without Frank, because he had access. He had the artwork or scans of most of this stuff. because most of that stuff has not been publicly released. I think issue 1 has been out there as far as sales of the original art, but the rest of the book, I don't know where it is, but I think it's all together somewhere, But, then again, then same with Dark Knight, except Frank didn't have that many Dark Knight pages. Those came from everybody and anybody because, him and Klaus were both selling the artwork for that when Dark Knight came out and stuff. But no, I mean, Frank's just, again, had a good relationship. I've been blessed to work with these people and do more than work with them. A lot of them have become real good friends over the years. And, I hate bugging friends for favors like that, but, it really helps when you're producing something like this, especially when you can offer them a platform saying, hey, yeah, well, we want to produce this, but I also want to give you some voice and input into this. So, going back to what I said earlier, it's not a book that has my vision or Graffiti Design's vision. It's a book that has Frank's vision, our Brian's vision, and that's always the ideal situation, and it's always makes the books more intriguing than if it was my vision. And again, not to beat myself up, but the reality is people would rather see what Brian and Frank are doing than what the hell I'm doing here. So it's again, been able to develop a lot of good relationships over the years, and it's really cool, and it's really fun working with these people on that sort of level. And again, being a creative facilitator for them, and them being comfortable and confident that I'm going to do them justice and stuff. And the same type of stuff we've had with Alex Ross over the years. Again, just good relationships that you can walk that weird ass line between personal and business, and just together produce something really, really cool. So
Normally I wouldn't ask, but you opened the door. So Electra Lives Again, one of my favorite books. Is the artwork out there? Like how did the art look without Varley's colors?
I only saw a few pages that were like that. Most of what I saw, again, this goes back to whenever it was, late 80s, early 90s. But it was, again, can't remember exactly what I saw. A lot of what I saw, I believe, was just the blue lines, but then there were a half a dozen or more pages that were fresh that Frank produced. And, and I haven't seen, a few pages have surfaced over the years, so I have no idea where that artwork is. And, so you don't see it coming up on CAF or on any of the, but yeah, I don't know, but it was, like I said, I wish I had a better memory, and wish I kept better notes, because that was a real fun book to work on, and a real big book to work on, and to be the primary producer of the book. And, I remember Frank and Lynn and we went up to Canada for the press check. So we were all there to watch the presses, watch the things come off the press. And Frank would then, they'd wake us up at weird hours of the morning and say, yeah, this section's being run. Do you want to see it? So we'd go up there, and Frank was funny because he'd start asking to change the colors and move them a little bit more this way and that way. And by the time he got it the way he wanted, they said, okay, that's it. And then Frank thought then they would start printing the stuff, but no, they were printing the stuff during the whole time, and Frank got to fine tune it. But so Frank had a learning experience in printing then, because things move so fast that you gotta make your adjustments quick, and you gotta live with where they are here and everything. But it was a real fun book to work on, and I'm real proud of that book. And it just it has a very unique look, and it's a very cool book. So,
are there printers in North America currently who could handle a gallery edition, or that's strictly moved overseas?
I don't know. I don't think so, because there's not even a whole lot of places you can handle it overseas. I know there's a few places in China. I think there's a place in Korea that can handle the size, and also it's the books. And again, I'll group gallery editions and arts editions together. They're labor intensive. They're just not traditional, just shit them out sort of printing. It's they use sheet fed presses, and it's large format. And like I said, the printing's one part of it. The printing could be handled probably by most countries and a lot of people. But then when it comes to the binding, it's a whole different thing. And it's I think we looked around, but it's just we couldn't find a printing house in the States or in Canada, because we've been dealing with Quebecor, or I'm not sure what they call themselves nowadays, but I've dealt with that company for years. They've been really good to us, and the people have been great. But again, they just weren't able to do it. And for some reason, China and I think Korea is the other place that ends up where they have the equipment. They have especially with these books where we have tipped in pages and stuff, whether it's vellum stuff or whether it's a gatefold, or there's little embellishments that I don't know if you can get embellishments in a cost-effective way in the United States, on any books. It's just, we've seen all these wonderful books that have come out from Europe over the years, and they had all these, whistles and bells and cool stuff involved in them. And these books, again, the problems just multiply because of the scale of it and everything here. Yeah. But so no.
No. All right. Joseph, have you been involved at all with the Apex editions, or just in maybe providing artwork? Or
yeah, I've helped them source material. Some of which came from myself, others from people I knew, and I did also. There were people who didn't have access to scanners, so I sort of got the artwork and scanned it for them.
Very nice. I just there's not that many companies currently producing, and 2000 AD and the Apex editions have really come out of the gate strong, and they seem to be having their moment. And they're produced in Turkey, as far as I know. So and the French volumes, they seem to print well in Belgium or France. So I guess it's all about numbers, though. I noticed French editions, they have print runs of 300,
right,
or 250, or doesn't seem to. I'm not sure how that scales to an economy of being able to afford that, but 2,500 is a good number, that's for sure. You said you're semi-retired, and I understand that. So from the website, it looks like you've the t-shirts are done, sort of. So is graffiti? The name I haven't brought up that's in all the credits is Gina. Is that your? What relationship is that?
She's my wife and associate on a lot of different levels. She keeps me stable. When we used to do a number of conventions every year, and having her with me was it makes it more doable, for lack of a better word here and stuff. So yes, she is my wife, or at least was until I did this book. But no.
Yeah, because you've got what you listed Diana Schutz as a editorial consultant. What is that? What role was that in this book?
She edited for me, not necessarily there's more text pieces in this book than normally I put in there. So we had Richard's introduction, and then we had Brian do his digital piece, and then Brian did an afterword. And I'm not known for my grasp of the English language, and editing is something I've been told I should never write, and if I should never write, I should never edit somebody else. So I again, it goes back to friendship. I've known Diana Schutz for centuries, and she knows what the hell she's doing, for lack of a better word, And she was actually funny, because I gave her the pieces that Brian and Richard Starkings did, and she goes, I can't edit these. I mean, this is a woman who translates books that are in French or in Spanish, or she's not only can grasp the English language, she has a grasp of foreign languages. She said, I can't edit this for you because it's British English. It's a different. I guess there's a set of fucking different rules that you have in the UK, and so she couldn't do it. And so for a while there, I was left in a, I was looking for somebody else who could edit. And then a few days later, she comes back and says, "Oh, I have a book that has all the secret formulas of how to edit." Because she didn't want to change, she didn't want to Americanize it, because there is a difference. She taught me enough in those conversations to know that there is a difference between UK proper English and our whatever we call our shit English here in the States here and stuff. So she got copy edited for them in the context of how they were written, and that's why there's a little disclaimer at the front of the book that says, hey, because she really didn't want to edit it because she didn't want it to come off looking wrong. She didn't want to Americanize, and because when she translates, she doesn't literally translate. She almost rewrites when she does a comic or something, because she puts the translation into the context it was meant to be in, rather than one that's just literal. And so again, she treats language like it's formula. I mean, again, it's way over my pay level. I just, but she knows what she's doing, but there's a little disclaimer at the beginning of the book that says, hey, in advance, just so you know, this was edited in to keep the integrity of the British English versus converting it into American English here. And I went, okay, if that's what you feel should be here, I'll include that. Again, it didn't make a, I went through a learning curve on that, because I thought, shit, it's English. So yeah, so she was my editor on that level. She didn't, there's not a whole lot of copy in the book other than that, but the 3 copy segments that were there, her eyes made me more confident, rather than just putting them out there without, oh yeah, Richard Starking knows what he's doing, I'm just going to slap it out there. So we did do it. She did do a real thorough copy editing on Richard and Brian and stuff. So
yeah, I read the disclaimer, but then I looked further up on the page and I saw color was still without the U, so I was a bit confused. But then I realized it's only for those portions.
Yeah. You got to talk to Brian and Diana and Richard about that. Like I said, they were long pieces, all of them. I mean, I was really happy that we got the text pieces we did. Richard added a lot of color to it just because of his position in this whole thing, and it was kind of funny also because Richard used to work with at Graffiti Designs for a few years, which was a lot of fun. So it was neat working with Richard again, and him being able to tell his story as far as how he lettered in, and he had those nice little letters that he wrote to Brian and to, I think, Dick Giordano, and it's kind of like, okay, that's a little bit of historical context to this, and his awareness of the original, the one Killing Joke logo that he created that was never really used. So we felt like it was very appropriate, rather than creating a logo, let's use something that already exists and already exists with that level of legacy and lineage and stuff like that. So it's we keep our eyes open and try to find opportunities to connect the dots in the right way. And and Richard and a lot of these other people just allowed us to produce a book that made sense. That was had the historical context and the background that we wanted it to have.
Do you feel that you had there was an extended period of time for this book? The production, you really had a long time to dwell, and I don't know, however whatever I was going to say ferment, but do you
Just
feel
eggs.
like the text pieces? I love the context that they add, right? Because otherwise you get a book and it's just a series of art pages, and you think, well, what is where are the circumstances? What context am I reading this in? And the Starking's text piece is wonderful, as are the 2 Bolland pieces. Were those late editions, or did you have those all along to add to the book?
No, I think they were all done fairly new. I think they're dated, and I think they were all done either at the end of 23 or in 24. So they're all current pieces. But I at one point was going to write some more editorial comment than I normally do, because this book there are other stories involved. You know, it does need to be put in context. But I started writing something, it became so boring and wordy. I mean, you know, people don't want to know about the old days when, you know, there was no digital this or that, or when, you know, comics were all colored in flat color. And this was during the transition period where people are going to the process color and the printing methods that DC and Marvel were using. It wasn't just the shitty letter presses. It was, you know, presses that could do more sophisticated colors on nicer paper, you know. So there's a whole backstory there that this really is in the thick of it, and it does show a lot of the evolution of comics if you want to read between the lines.
Oh, I think you've frozen. Oh, I'm frozen? Yeah.
Hold on, I'm bailing out for a second. Oops.
That's all right.
Am I there?
You're there.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know where you want me to be there on that and what I was answering, but you know, but yeah, it just the book deserves it. It reeks of context. It reeks of and again, and maybe just to me, you know, maybe it's something where, you know, nobody else really cares, but, you know, I'm aware of the blue line method and the gray line method and black line methods and the printing stuff that was changing then, and the, you know, the designing that was changing. Again, DC, I mean, I know from Richard Bruning, you know, you see even in this book, the logo on the cover ended up being just a logo type set and was done differently than originally perceived. And a lot of that was Richard's doing, because again, he knew they were trying to evolve and gear their product more towards you know, the bookstore market, or because they saw that's where they were trying to be, and there were, you know, internal struggles at DC about that, exactly how to present these books and how to build into that other market. And you know, and then making Brian doing 2 different page sizes of the artwork, you know, that's funny in itself and everything. So it's you know, but yeah, the you know, again, but then I went to the thing, well, these books really aren't supposed to have a lot of editorial copy. It goes back to that, you know, prime directive shit, you know, and this is what these books are supposed to be about. And you know, I blurred the edges possibly a little here, but you know, I also, you know, no, people don't want to read this stuff in this context. You know, again, these books are about the artwork, no, cut and dry. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But I wanted to put a framing device on it if I could. And I think what Brian provided, especially his closing piece, is really nice. It's a little dark, but it's an appropriate piece where he kind of says, yeah, you know, and it's history. Again, in Brian's mind, this is what he did, not what he's doing or what he's going to do. And so he has a very healthy perspective, and you know, it's just, you know, how do you capture that in a book like this without stating the obvious, or you know, putting it into words other than the people who are involved in the book here. Yeah.
I mean, I think as we came towards the end of the book, I think Bob and I were discussing the fact that we'd learned a lot about the process and lots of sort of little interesting tidbits and anecdotes about how Killing Joke had come about, and I think we wanted this to be the sort of the final word, to be able to include some of that information and make it something that stood the test of time. This would be the final word on Killing Joke, and hopefully, well, it'll be up to you guys to judge whether we've done that.
That's you know, I think so. It's they just add so much to the book. It's wonderful. Graffiti, it'd be impossible now to think of a gallery edition without vellum overlays. I mean, it's you guys, you know, it's part of the have you thought to add something, or have you tried to add something into the process and it just didn't work, and you thought, no, this didn't work? Have you had any failures in your idea designs?
No, because they more or less, I want to say, create themselves. It's what, if the art determines it. There was one vellum overlay we wanted for this book, but we decided against it. We were going to do a vellum overlay with the Barbara Gordon page and do a vellum overlay with that because we had access to that. I think it would have been really cool, but
Sorry,
it's
I
just
should,
not appropriate, you know.
just for context here, the Barbara Gordon page, there are two different versions of it. I think Brian, I think it was an example of sort of self-censorship where Brian decided that one of the panels was a bit too graphic and decided to change that slightly. And I think that's what Bob's referencing there.
It is, and again, and it's a good story because it's not DC or anybody else that told Brian no. Brian, you know, it was a big boy, and he said, "Nah, this is, you know." But there's anal retentive collectors and people like me, where for the sake of completeness, I really wanted it on there, and you know, Joseph and I spoke about it, and we kind of said, you know, Brian really is not lobbying for the world to see this, but for the sake of completeness, I would have loved to have seen it in there, and it would have been on a vellum overlay. It would have gone across. It's only one panel, I believe, that is differentiated, but it's a rather graphic panel. But so that's one that I regret not being able to use, but I understand it completely, and it's good that it's not there because I have no idea what DC would have even said about this. But you know, but like I said, DC didn't even have a chance to say it. But I don't know if they would have said yay or nay to it, but you know, again, with Brian not liking, it goes back, excuse me, with what I said earlier, as far as you know, we try to follow the lead of the creator, and Brian was, you know, us be fulfilling what Brian's wanted was one of our main goals here and stuff, you know. But no, the vellum again, they create themselves. There are things where there are, you know, there's a cover in there, a Justice League cover where there's just a little Zatanna that Brian redrew because this is when Zatanna was going to do one of her costume changes or something like that, and Brian drew it one way, and then no, she did that. So it's just kind of cool, especially when we have the ability to access you know, different versions of the same thing or something, you know. It's, yeah, so yeah, we enjoy them. They're fun. They're things that when they work, it just gives people a little more in-depth look as far as, you know, what either something looks without logo type on it, or you know, like even the cover was kind of cool because it was nice seeing it clean, you know, with no logo on it, and then having one that has the DC logo and Killing Joke and the credits and stuff on it. It just made for again something that's more interesting here, you know.
How much how involved are the artists? Do you seek their involvement? Do you know, or do you just show them the final product, or does it vary by artist?
They call the shot, and most of them don't have the time or the desire, or they, and I don't want to say they trust us, but they trust us enough. So on this, I did my best to keep Brian in the loop and show him things before it got too far. But you know, he really wasn't. And again, I'm just not picking on Brian. Most of them just, you know, they to be intimately involved is more time and effort than they have to expend here and stuff. So it's but there's ways to get their input without it being literal, and you know, you make sure that they're you know, my goal or our goal with these books is, you know, I just want to make sure Brian's happy with it. If this is a book that Brian's not happy with, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. You know, I'm not looking for his endorsement or anything, but you know, I want something that he's comfortable with, he's proud of, because it does represent his work. It does represent him, and so he's the first priority as far as, you know, making people happy. Besides Joseph and I, we got to be happy first, and then the artist is right behind that and everything.
Very good. I've taken 2 hours of your time, and I really appreciate it. Did either one of you have something you wanted to say about the book before we sign off?
Oops, did I lock up or did you lock up?
You're oh, there you go. You're in and out a bit there. Maybe Joseph, do you have something? Give Bob a minute.
I honestly don't. You've got me stumped.
No, that's all right.
No, if I was to say anything, it's just, I've just been, to be able to produce books like this with the caliber of artist and the talent that we're working with, it's a privilege. And what more could you ask for? We're proud to be able to produce these books. We hope that people enjoy them and are happy with them and appreciate the time and effort we put into it. And that's it. I mean, I'm hoping a few years down the road, I want to open up all my gallery edition books and try to savor them. I don't smoke a cigar, but I might try to smoke a cigar and have some wine and just enjoy them. So I'm making them for myself, for somewhere down the road when I can forget the pain and the suffering and all the anguish they created, but just flat out enjoy them. But no, we're proud of what we've done. I'm thankful. Joseph, I mean, these books would not exist without Joseph, and I'm not just saying that to he's, again, he has the skills, and he's, again, we can work together. He can tolerate me, and we've done some good stuff here. So we're both very proud of this, and you can't ask for too much more. You could ask for a good payday, but no, it's just having these books.
We both know that's not happening.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. No. But yeah, thank you for taking time and talking to us here, and we would love to do more of this in the future. And so if we can help in any ways, let us know. But again, everybody, take a look at the books, let us know what you think, enjoy them, and thank you for buying them.
Thank you.